I can cure your wife, but you must promise me something. And he laughed until he saw the miracle. Michael Thompson walked through the hospital corridors with heavy steps, carrying the weight of 6 months of despair. His wife, Jennifer, had been hospitalized in a catatonic state, unresponsive to any stimulus, leaving the best doctors in New York City without answers. That's when he felt a hand touch his shoulder. Turning around, he saw a young man in his 30s, dressed in simple clothes and wearing a gentle smile. "Mr. Michael?" the young man asked. "I'm Nathan Wilson, a therapist. I know this may sound strange, but I can cure your wife." Michael looked at the young man with suspicion. He had already wasted a fortune on charlatans and false miracle workers. "Who are you? How do you know my name?" he asked irritably. "I work here at the hospital, but not officially. I do some volunteer work with special patients, and I know exactly what happened to Mrs. Jennifer. Everyone here knows. It's no secret she's been like this for months," Michael replied dryly. Nathan shook his head slowly. "I'm not talking about her condition, Mr. Michael. I'm talking about the reason. I know she fell into this state the day after you missed your wedding anniversary for the 3rd year in a row. The businessman felt his blood run cold. That detail wasn't in any medical record." "How do you know that?" he whispered. "Because I grew up hearing Mrs. Jennifer crying alone in your kitchen. My mother, Ruth Wilson, worked as a housekeeper in your home for 15 years. Michael vaguely remembered the woman, a quiet person who took care of the house with care. "Your mother, Ruth. She left because she found out she had a tumor, and you fired her the same day, saying you couldn't afford the health plan for someone who was sick." The words hit Michael like a punch to the gut. He had completely forgotten about the incident. "I can cure your wife," Nathan repeated, now more firmly, "but you must promise me something first." "How much do you want?" Michael asked, pulling out his wallet. Nathan smiled sadly. "I don't want your money, Mr. Michael. I want you to spend 30 days living as an ordinary person. No credit cards, no chauffeur, no staff. Working a simple job, earning minimum wage." Michael laughed loudly, drawing the attention of nurses passing by. "Are you insane? I have a company to run, employees who depend on me. I can't just—" "Your wife is dying inside, Mr. Michael, and the only cure is seeing that the man she fell in love with still exists." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing, Michael turned to leave, but Nathan spoke again. "She used to tell me how you promised that once you were rich, you'd spend more time together. That was 20 years ago, Mr. Michael, and she's still waiting." The businessman stopped mid-step. Those words echoed like a reminder of a past he had chosen to forget. "You don't understand. I built all of this for her, for us, the company, the house, everything. And where is she in all of this?" Nathan stepped in front of him. "When was the last time you had dinner together? Watched a movie? Asked her how her day was?" Michael opened his mouth to answer, but realized he couldn't remember. "She's like this because she gave up on living, Mr. Michael, because she feels invisible in her own home." "That's ridiculous. Jennifer has everything a woman could want. Except the one thing she truly wants. You." Nathan pulled a piece of paper from his pocket and handed it to Michael. "Here's my number. When you're ready to truly save your wife, call me. But know there's no other way. Either you change or she'll never come back. What if I don't accept your crazy proposal?" Nathan looked out the hallway window at the hospital garden, where a few patients walked slowly. "Then, keep visiting an empty shell every day, because the woman you loved has been gone for a long time." Michael was left alone in the hallway, clutching the paper with the phone number. His rational mind told him this was absurd, but something deep in his heart whispered that the young man might be right. That night, in his mansion on the Upper East Side, Michael dined alone as he had for months. The enormous table felt even larger in Jennifer's absence. He tried to work, but Nathan's words echoed in his mind. He went upstairs to the bedroom he shared with his wife and opened her closet. Her clothes were still there, carrying her scent. In one of the drawers, he found a small notebook. a diary Jennifer had kept. With trembling hands, he opened it to the last entry, written 3 days before she fell into a catatonic state. Today marks our 25th anniversary. Michael forgot again. I'm starting to wonder if he even remembers I exist. Sometimes I talk to him for hours about my day and he just nods, eyes glued to his phone. Are we still a couple, or just two people sharing a house? Michael closed the notebook with tears in his eyes. For the first time in years, he truly cried. The next day, he called Nathan. I accept your proposal, he said, trying to steady his voice. But I want guarantees you can really help my wife. Meet me at the hospital in an hour. I'll show you something that will convince you. Michael arrived at the hospital wearing a $3,000 suit and driving his imported Lexus. Nathan waited at the entrance, dressed in a simple t-shirt and faded jeans. Come with me, Nathan said, leading Michael through the halls to Jennifer's room. The 52-year-old woman lay in bed, eyes open but completely vacant. Her skin was pale and she had lost a lot of weight. She's conscious, Nathan explained softly. She hears everything around her, but has chosen to disconnect emotionally from the world. How can you be sure? Nathan approached the bed and gently took Jennifer's hand. Mrs. Jennifer, your husband is here. He really wants you to come home. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, almost imperceptibly, a tear rolled down Jennifer's cheek. Michael was stunned. The doctors had said she didn't respond to external stimuli. How did you do that? Because I speak to her heart, not her mind, and her heart still loves you, Mr. Michael, but it's tired of loving alone. Michael stepped closer and took his wife's other hand. Jennifer, my love, I'm here. Please, come back to me. But this time nothing happened, no reaction. Why didn't she respond to me? Michael asked, frustrated. Because words have lost meaning for her. She's heard empty promises for too many years. Only real actions can bring her back now. Nathan pulled up a small chair and placed it beside the bed. Sit here and tell her about your first date. Not about work, not about money, just the two of you. Michael hesitated but finally sat down. He began talking about the day he met Jennifer at a college party. She was studying education. He was in business school. They were young, broke, but full of dreams. As he spoke, Michael noticed Jennifer's tears had grown heavier, though she still didn't move. She's listening, Nathan murmured. Keep going. Michael spent the next hour telling stories from the beginning of their relationship. How they shared a tiny apartment, how Jennifer cooked with few ingredients but always with so much love, how they talked late into the night about their dreams. When he finished, Nathan walked him to the hallway. Did you see how she reacted when you mentioned the past? It's because back then you were a team. Now she feels like a stranger in her own life. And you really believe working an ordinary job for 30 days will change anything? It's not about the job, Mr. Michael. It's about rediscovering who you were before money changed everything. The man she fell in love with. Michael took a deep breath. And if I agree, can you guarantee she'll get better? I can't promise anything, but I can promise I'll do everything in my power to bring her back. And if you truly change, if she sees that the man she loved still exists, then yes, there's a real chance. How did you learn to do this? It's not conventional treatment. Nathan looked out the hospital window at the trees swaying in the wind. My mother went through something similar when she found out she was sick. She shut down, gave up fighting. Watching her, I learned that sometimes medicine can't heal what's broken inside. And she, your mother, did she recover? She passed 2 years later, but in her last months I managed to bring her back. I made her smile again, made her believe it was worth fighting. Michael saw the pain in the young man's eyes. I'm sorry. That's why I chose to work with cases like Mrs. Jennifer's, because I learned that true love can heal, but only when it's shown through actions, not just words. Michael went home that night with his decision made. He called his lawyer and set up temporary power of attorney for his partner to run the company for the next 30 days. Michael, have you lost your mind? Said Richard, his partner of 15 years. We have the merger with the American company happening this very month. That's exactly why I need to do this, Richard. I realized I'm losing the only thing that really matters. Jennifer will be fine. The doctors said... The doctors don't know anything, Michael interrupted. I'm losing her, and this might be my last chance to save her. The next day, Michael met Nathan at the hospital entrance. I'm ready, he said, wearing simple clothes he'd bought at a discount store. What do I need to do? First, hand over your wallet, cards, and car keys. For the next 30 days, you'll live on exactly $1,200 a month. Michael hesitated, then handed everything over. Now you'll need a place to stay and a job. I've arranged that for you. Where will I be staying? A boarding house in Queens. It's simple but clean. And I found you work as a doorman at a residential building. The shift is from 6 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. Michael felt a tightness in his chest. It had been over 20 years since he'd depended on anyone or worried about money. And Jennifer? I'll visit her every day, I'll talk to her, do sensory stimulation exercises, but the most important part of the treatment is you discovering who you really are without all the luxury around you. The boarding house was in a neighborhood Michael had never set foot in. The room was tiny, with a single bed, a small wardrobe, and a shared bathroom down the hall. It won't be easy, Nathan said, leaving Michael at the door. But remember, your wife has been waiting years for the man she loved. It's time for him to show up. Michael spent his first night wide awake, listening to street noises he'd never noticed before. Car horns, loud conversations, music from nearby bars. Everything was so different from the silence of his mansion. On his first day working as a doorman, Michael arrived at the building at 5:30 in the morning. The superintendent, a man named Frank, greeted him. You must be Michael. Nathan told me about you. Are you new to this line of work? Very new, Michael replied, trying to hide his nervousness. Relax, man, it's easy. You just need to keep an eye on who comes and goes, receive packages, and tidy up the lobby a bit. The first few hours were humiliating for Michael. Residents treated him as if he were invisible. Some didn't even respond to his good morning. An elderly woman complained that he hadn't polished the entrance floor properly. For heaven's sake, this is what you're paid for, she said, looking at him with disdain. Michael felt the urge to shout that he owned companies bigger than the entire building, but he held back. He remembered Nathan's words about rediscovering who he was. During his lunch break, he called Nathan. This is ridiculous. I'm being treated like garbage. And how did you treat the people who worked for you? Nathan asked calmly. Michael fell silent. He had never thought about it before. Remember my mother, Ruth? How did you treat her? I paid her salary on time. Did you ever ask how she was doing? Did you know she had diabetes? That she raised 5 children alone? Michael felt a weight in his chest. He was starting to understand where Nathan was going with this. Keep working, Mr. Michael, and pay attention to how every person you meet has a story, dreams, and struggles. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. That afternoon, Michael met Mrs. Margaret, a 70-year-old woman who lived alone in apartment 302. She always stopped to chat when she passed through the lobby. You're new here, dear? She asked with a smile. Yes, Mrs. Margaret. I started today. It's nice to have a young face around here. The last doorman was so grumpy. She told him she had been a widow for 5 years and that her children lived far away. Michael saw the loneliness in her eyes and for the first time in years truly listened to someone talk about life. My husband also worked too much, she said, as if reading his thoughts. He always said it was to give me a better life, but in the end what I really wanted was his company. The words struck Michael like a revelation. It was exactly what Jennifer had always tried to tell him. They think we want expensive things, fancy apartments, Mrs. Margaret continued. But what we really want is someone to share a cup of coffee with at the end of the day. Michael returned to his boarding house that night with his mind racing. For the first time in months, he didn't think about work, meetings, or money. He thought about Jennifer, about how lonely she must have felt in that enormous house. The next day, During his visit to the hospital, Nathan found Jennifer exactly as always, eyes open but distant. "Mrs. Jennifer, your Michael started a new job yesterday," Nathan said, gently holding her hand. "He's learning new things about life." For a moment, Nathan thought he saw an almost imperceptible movement in Jennifer's fingers, but he wasn't sure. He met a woman who reminds him so much of you. A woman who loved a man who worked too much. This time Nathan was certain Jennifer had lightly squeezed his hand. Meanwhile, Michael faced his second day as a doorman. This time, he paid more attention to the people. He noticed the man in apartment 504 always looked tired and sad. The woman in 201 carried her heavy groceries alone. The young man in 1003 was always rushing, as if late for something. During lunch, Michael decided to help Mrs. Margaret with her shopping. She had mentioned she had trouble carrying bags since she hurt her knee. "You don't have to do that, my dear," she said, moved. "I want to help, Mrs. Margaret." As they climbed the stairs, she shared more about her life. How she had worked as an elementary school teacher for 40 years, how she had cared for her husband when he fell ill, how useless she felt now that she was alone. "Sometimes I go whole days without speaking to anyone," she confessed. "It's a loneliness that aches in my chest." Michael thought of Jennifer, alone in that house for hours on end while he was buried in work. "Have you ever thought about moving closer to your children?" "They're always running around, dear. They work too much. They don't have time for an old woman like me." Michael noticed the pattern repeating itself. Children who work too much, parents left alone, relationships destroyed by the rush of modern life. On the third day, Michael began to enjoy the job. He discovered that talking to people was comforting. Every resident had an interesting story to tell. The man in 504, who always seemed sad, was recently widowed. The woman in 201 was going through a divorce and raising 2 children alone. The young man in 1003 worked 3 jobs to pay for college. "How do you stay so positive?" the young man asked Michael during a conversation in the elevator. "Positive? You always greet everyone, always have a smile. Most doormen here act like we're invisible." Michael was surprised. He had simply started treating people the way he wanted to be treated. That night at the boarding house, Michael called Nathan. "How's Jennifer?" "Getting better little by little. Today she reacted when I mentioned you, squeezed my hand twice." Michael felt his heart race. "Can I visit her?" "Not yet, Mr. Thompson. She needs to feel the change is real, not temporary. If you show up at the hospital now, she might think it's just another empty promise." "But what if she needs me?" "She needs the new Michael, not the old one. Keep working, keep learning." Michael sighed but agreed. He was starting to understand that this process wasn't just about Jennifer healing. It was about him rediscovering who he truly was. By the end of the first week, Michael had settled into the routine. He woke at 5 in the morning, had coffee at the corner bakery, worked until 2 in the afternoon, ate lunch at a local diner, and spent the rest of the day walking through the city, observing the life he'd never noticed before. It was during one of these walks that he found an old bookstore downtown. He went in out of curiosity and stumbled upon poetry books he used to read in college. He bought a volume of Robert Frost, Jennifer's favorite poet. That night, in his boarding house room, he read a few poems aloud. It felt strange but comforting. It had been years since he'd read anything that wasn't a financial report or business proposal. The second week of work began with a surprise. Frank, the building manager, asked Michael to organize a residents' meeting. "You have a different way of talking to people," Frank said. "Everyone likes you. I think you could help solve some of the issues we've been having here." The meeting took place in the building's party room. Michael was surprised to see how the residents treated each other. There were arguments, gossip, fights over small things. "The problem is, no one listens here," Mrs. Margaret said during the meeting. "Everyone talks, but no one hears." Michael remembered how often he'd done that with Jennifer. She would talk about her day, her feelings, and he'd just nod, his mind somewhere else. "What if each person speaks for 2 minutes about their issue and the rest of the time we listen?" Michael suggested. The idea worked. For the first time in years, the residents truly listened to each other. They discovered they had more in common than they imagined. The man from 504, a widower, offered to help the woman from 201 with her kids on weekends. The young man from 1003 volunteered to run errands for Mrs. Margaret when needed. Small gestures that made everyone's lives easier. "You should work with people," Mrs. Margaret told Michael after the meeting. "So you have a special way about you." Michael smiled but didn't say he had worked with people before. The problem was he had always seen others as chess pieces, not as human beings with feelings and needs. Nathan kept visiting Jennifer every day. He had developed a routine, arriving in the morning, chatting with her about simple things, playing soft music, and doing sensory stimulation exercises. "Mrs. Jennifer, your Michael is learning to listen to people," Nathan said, gently massaging her hands. "Yesterday he told me about a woman he met who reminded me so much of you." Jennifer still responded subtly, sometimes with a tear, sometimes with an almost imperceptible movement of her fingers. "He's rediscovering who he is inside. The man you fell in love with is still there. He was just buried under work and responsibility." Nathan had studied similar cases during his training. He knew Jennifer's condition was more emotional than physical. She had disconnected from reality as a defense mechanism against years of emotional loneliness. "Have you ever thought about studying psychology?" Michael asked Nathan during one of their weekly phone calls. "Actually, I graduated in psychology 5 years ago, but I've always preferred volunteer work over private practice." "Why?" "Because I watched doctors dismiss my mother without ever taking the time to truly know her. She was just another case, another number. I learned that healing goes far beyond medicine and procedures." Michael was starting to understand that too. At work, he had begun to really get to know people, their stories, their fears, their dreams. And the more he learned, the more he realized how shallow his relationships had been for years. Mrs. Margaret had become his closest friend in the building. She reminded him of his own mother, whom he had lost 10 years earlier, a simple woman who had always put family first, but whom Michael had visited less and less as his business grew. "My son used to live here in New York," Mrs. Margaret shared during one of their afternoon coffees in the lobby. "But 5 years ago he moved to Los Angeles for work. He says he'll visit more, but something always comes up. Don't you get upset with him? What mother gets upset with her son for working? I understand he has responsibilities, but sometimes I just wish he'd call to ask how I'm doing, you know?" Michael thought about how often Jennifer had asked for exactly that, a call in the middle of the day just to check in, but there had always been a more important meeting, a more urgent client. "Do you think he doesn't call because he doesn't care?" "No, my dear. I think he doesn't call because he's forgotten how. Forgotten that a mother needs affection, not just money at the end of the month." Mrs. Margaret's words echoed in Michael's mind all day. Jennifer had never asked for money, jewelry, or expensive cars. She had always asked for time, attention, companionship. At the end of the second week, Michael got an unexpected call. It was Richard, his business partner. "Michael, where are you? We have a crisis at the company. The American client is threatening to pull out of the merger." Michael felt that familiar tightness in his chest, the anxiety that always came with business troubles. "What happened?" "They want to speak directly with you. They say they don't trust anyone else to handle the negotiations." For a moment, Michael considered dropping everything and rushing to the company, but then he remembered Jennifer, motionless in that hospital bed. "Richard, you can handle this. I trust you." "But Michael, if they don't want to work with us without me there, then maybe they're not the right partners for our company." After hanging up, Michael realized he had just done something he'd never done before, put his personal life above business. He called Nathan immediately. "I just refused to handle a crisis at the company. For the first time in 20 years, I said no to work." "How do you feel?" "Scared," Michael admitted, "but also relieved. It's strange." That's how Mrs. Jennifer felt when you chose work over her, scared and relieved at the same time. Relieved? Relieved because at least she knew where she stood. It's easier to deal with rejection when it's clear. Michael had never thought of it that way. How many times had he pushed Jennifer aside, making her feel rejected? The third week brought a significant change. Michael had become a beloved figure in the building. The residents didn't just greet him. They stopped to chat, shared about their days, asked for advice. "You've changed the energy of this place," said the woman from 201, Sarah. "Ever since you arrived, people have been kinder to each other." Michael realized it was true. Mrs. Margaret had started baking cakes for the neighbors. The man from 504, Mr. Robert, had offered to teach Sarah's children guitar. The young student, Tyler, had organized a study group for other kids in the building. "You know what's funny?" Sarah said. "You didn't do anything extraordinary. You just treated everyone with respect." "Sometimes that's all people need," Michael replied. He was learning that leading people wasn't about giving orders or showing authority. It was about listening, understanding, and genuinely caring. At the hospital, Nathan noticed more significant changes in Jennifer. She had started moving her eyes, following sounds around the room. Sometimes, when he talked about Michael, she'd give an almost imperceptible smile. "Mrs. Jennifer, today marks 2 weeks since your Michael started working as a doorman," Nathan said during one visit. "He told me he met a woman who bakes cakes for her neighbors, just like you used to do for them when you were young." Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. Nathan realized she was fighting to come back, but there was still fear. Fear of being disappointed again. "He's different, Mrs. Jennifer. He's not that man who only thought about work anymore. He's learning to see people, to care about them." Nathan held Jennifer's hand and felt a firm squeeze. For the first time in 6 months, she had voluntarily gripped his hand. "Do you want me to tell him you're improving?" Jennifer squeezed again, this time twice. Nathan took it as no. "You want to be sure the change is real?" One squeeze. "Yes." Nathan smiled. Jennifer had been conscious longer than he'd realized. She was testing Michael, waiting to see if the transformation was genuine. In the 4th week, Michael faced his first big test. It was Friday afternoon when Richard showed up at the building where he worked. "Michael, what are you doing?" Richard asked, looking around the lobby in disbelief. "Working," Michael replied calmly. "This isn't work, it's madness. The company's in crisis. We lost 3 major clients this week." Michael felt the familiar anxiety rise in his chest. The instinct to rush and save the business was almost irresistible. "And why did we lose those clients?" "Because you're not there to make the important decisions. The employees are lost without your leadership." "Or maybe they're lost because they never learned to make decisions on their own," Michael countered. "Because I always did everything for them." Richard looked at his friend as if he'd lost his mind. "Michael, you're destroying everything we built. Would Jennifer have wanted this?" The mention of his wife hit Michael like a punch. For a moment, he considered abandoning everything and returning to the company, but then he remembered Nathan's words about genuine actions. "Jennifer always wanted me to be happy, and I've never been happier than in these last 3 weeks." "Happy? You're working as a doorman." "And treating people like human beings for the first time in years," Michael replied calmly. "I've learned more about leadership this month than in 20 years running a company." Richard shook his head in disbelief. "When this phase passes, I hope there's still something left to save." After Richard left, Michael sat in the doorman's chair and reflected. For the first time, he had consciously chosen a path different from money and traditional success, and surprisingly, he felt no regret. Margaret, who had overheard the conversation from a distance, approached. "Was there a problem, dear?" "That was my business partner. He thinks I'm crazy for working here." "And what do you think?" Michael smiled. "I think I am crazy, and that it might be the first sensible thing I've done in 20 years. Margaret laughed. "Sometimes crazy is just another word for courage." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. By the final week of the challenge, Michael had fully adapted to his new life. He'd developed routines he never imagined possible, waking without an alarm, enjoying breakfast without rushing, talking to people without hidden agendas. The building had become a small community. Margaret organized potluck dinners in the party room. Robert had formed a little music group with other residents. Sarah had landed a better job, thanks to networking tips Michael had casually shared. "You've changed our lives," said Tyler, the young student, during one of those dinners. Before, everyone lived isolated here. Now we're a family. Michael realized something unexpected had happened. He'd discovered a new way to lead, not through authority or power, but through empathy and genuine connection. On the second-to-last day of the challenge, Nathan called Michael urgently. "I need you to come to the hospital. Jennifer is awake." Michael's heart raced. He took the first available bus and rushed through the hospital corridors to his wife's room. Jennifer was sitting up in bed, still fragile, but with alert, focused eyes. When she saw Michael, her eyes filled with tears. "Michael," she whispered hoarsely. He approached slowly, as if she might vanish at any moment. "Jennifer, my love, you're back." "I never left," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I was just waiting for you to come back too." Michael held her carefully, feeling how thin and fragile she'd become. "Forgive me, my love. Forgive me for everything." "I heard everything," Jennifer murmured against his shoulder. "Nathan told me about your discoveries, the people you met, how you were learning to live again. You knew I was doing the challenge." Jennifer nodded. "I needed to be sure it wasn't just another empty promise. I needed to see you'd really changed." Nathan, who had been standing quietly in the corner, stepped forward. "Mrs. Wilson has been conscious for almost 2 weeks. She asked to wait until she was certain." Michael looked at his wife with admiration and sadness. "How could you forgive me after all I've done? After all those wasted years?" "Because the man I fell in love with was still there," Jennifer said, gently touching his face. "He was just lost under all that work and responsibility. I almost lost you forever, but you didn't. And now we know we can always find each other again, no matter how lost we get along the way." Their reunion was interrupted by doctors who came to examine Jennifer. Her awakening had surprised the entire medical team, who couldn't scientifically explain how she had come out of her catatonic state. "It's medically inexplicable," said Dr. Miller, the neurologist in charge of the case. "All the tests indicated she could have remained in that state indefinitely." Nathan smiled. "Not everything can be explained by medicine, doctor. Sometimes the heart heals what science can't reach." Michael spent the rest of the day at the hospital, talking to Jennifer about everything he had learned in the last 4 weeks. She listened carefully, asking questions, smiling when he told her about Margaret and the other residents of the building. "I want to meet them," she said. "Especially Margaret. She reminds me of my grandmother." "You will. We'll visit them together." "And your work? Your company?" Michael thought for a moment. "The company will keep going, but differently. I've learned that leadership isn't about controlling everything. It's about developing people so they can make their own decisions. What if it doesn't succeed without you in full control? Then maybe it wasn't meant to succeed in the first place." Jennifer smiled, recognizing a wisdom in her husband that hadn't been there before. On the last day of the challenge, Michael went to say goodbye to the building's residents. He had decided to keep visiting them regularly, but could no longer work as a full-time doorman. "You can't leave," Tyler protested. "Who's going to give us advice?" "You don't need me to make good decisions," Michael replied. "These last few weeks have proved that." Margaret hugged him with tears in her eyes. "You've been like a son to me, my dear. You made me remember I still matter to someone." "You'll always matter to me, Margaret, and I want you to meet my wife when she leaves the hospital. She must be a very special woman to have won a man like you. Truth is, I'm the lucky one to have won her, and I almost lost that luck by being too stubborn to see what really matters." Frank, the building manager, handed Michael a small plaque. "The residents voted unanimously to give you this." The plaque read, "Michael Thompson, the doorman who taught us to be a family." Michael held it with emotion. It was the most meaningful award he had ever received in his entire career. Nathan met Michael as he was leaving the building. "How do you feel?" "Different, better, more whole," Michael answered honestly. "And now, will you go back to your old life?" "I'll go back to my company, but not to my old life. I've learned too much to pretend nothing has changed." "And Jennifer?" "Jennifer is strong enough to come home tomorrow. The doctors want to monitor her for a few more weeks, but she's out of danger." Nathan smiled with satisfaction. It worked. Your method worked. How can I thank you? Keep being the person you've become these last 4 weeks. That's the only thanks that matters. That night, Michael returned to his mansion for the first time in a month. The house felt strange, too big, too empty. He walked through the rooms, imagining how lonely Jennifer must have felt there every day. In their bedroom, he found the clothes he had left a month earlier, an expensive suit, imported shoes, a Swiss watch. They looked like they belonged to someone else. He opened Jennifer's closet and chose a simple dress she used to wear when they were young. It was still there, tucked among more elegant clothes he had bought for her over the years. The next day, Michael took Jennifer home. She was still fragile, but her eyes sparkled with a vitality he hadn't seen in years. "The house feels different," she remarked as she walked in. "Different how?" "I can't explain. More welcoming, maybe." Michael realized it was he who was different. The house was the same, but his perception of it had changed. Now he saw a home, not just an expensive property. They spent their first day together doing simple things, having a leisurely breakfast, watching an old movie, cooking together, things they hadn't done in years. "I missed you," Jennifer said as they prepared dinner. "I was here every day before you got sick. Your body was here. Your mind was always somewhere else." Michael stopped chopping vegetables and looked at her. "And now? Now you're whole, truly present." That night, they talked late into the night about plans for the future. Michael shared his ideas for reshaping the company, making it a more humane place to work. "I want to implement work-life balance programs. I want my employees to have time for their families. What if it affects profits? I'd rather have smaller profits and happier people. I've learned success isn't just about money." Jennifer smiled, recognizing the man she had fallen in love with years ago. In the first week after Jennifer's return, Michael took her to see the building where he had worked. Mrs. Margaret welcomed her like a daughter. "Now I understand why Michael changed so much," Mrs. Margaret said, hugging Jennifer. "He was fighting to come back to you." "Actually, he was fighting to come back to himself," Jennifer corrected. "I was just waiting." The reunion was emotional. Jennifer spoke at length with each resident, genuinely interested in their stories. Michael watched with pride as she naturally connected with people. "Your wife is special," Mr. Robert told Michael while Jennifer played with Sarah's children. "She always has been. I was the one who forgot to see it." Tyler, the young student, approached Michael shyly. "Can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course. How do you love someone for so long?" Michael looked at Jennifer, who was helping Mrs. Margaret serve cake to everyone. "Love isn't a feeling, Tyler. It's a choice. Every day you wake up and choose whether to invest in the person or let circumstances destroy what you've built. And you almost chose wrong. For 20 years I chose wrong. But I learned it's never too late to make the right choice." In the following weeks, Michael implemented significant changes in his company. He introduced flexible hours, personal development programs, and communal spaces for employees. Richard was skeptical at first. "This will lower productivity." "We'll see," Michael said calmly. To everyone's surprise, including Richard's, productivity increased. Happier employees worked with more dedication and creativity. The workplace became more collaborative and less competitive. "How did you know this would work?" Richard asked 3 months later. "Because I learned that when you treat people as human beings, they respond as human beings. When you treat them like machines, they work like machines." Michael also introduced a program where executives spent 1 day a month working in operational roles. He wanted everyone to understand what it was like to be on the other side. "It's humiliating," one director complained after his first day on the production line. "It's educational," Michael corrected. "How can you lead people you don't understand?" Jennifer had gotten involved in volunteer work, helping other women who were going through depression. Her experience of nearly losing her connection to life had given her a unique perspective on emotional recovery. "What helped me the most was knowing that Michael was truly changing," she told a support group. It wasn't just words this time. One of the women in the group asked, "How did you manage to forgive him?" "Because I realized he hadn't left me out of malice. He had lost his way, just like I got lost in depression. Sometimes two people who love each other can lose themselves at the same time. Nathan had gone back to school, pursuing a specialization in family therapy. His success with Jennifer had confirmed his calling for complex cases. "You have a special gift," Michael said during a dinner meeting. "Honestly, I just learned to listen to what people are really saying behind their words." "What do you mean?" "When I met you, Mrs. Jennifer wasn't asking to be healed. She was asking to be seen. And you weren't asking for her to wake up. You were asking to wake up too." Michael reflected on that. It was true. That month as a doorman had been his own awakening. 6 months after the challenge ended, Michael and Jennifer took a special trip. They returned to the apartment where they had lived when they were young and poor. The building was still there, but it had been renovated. They walked through the neighborhood where they had built their first dreams. "We were happy here," Jennifer said, looking at the window of their old apartment. "We were happy because we had time for each other." "And now?" Michael hugged her on the street, not caring about the people passing by. "Now we have time and experience. It's the best combination possible." They went into the bakery where they used to have breakfast on weekends. The owner, Mr. George, was still there, older, but with the same warm smile. "Michael and Jennifer," as he exclaimed, "you disappeared around here." "Life took us on different paths," Michael said, "but we ended up coming back home. You've changed. You're different." "More mature?" Jennifer asked with a smile. "More connected," Mr. George replied. "Before, you were two young people in love. Now you're a real couple." Over breakfast, Michael and Jennifer reminisced about the dreams they had shared in that same place decades earlier. "Remember when you said you wanted to build a company that would change people's lives?" Jennifer asked. "I built the company, but I forgot the part about changing lives. And now I'm changing from the inside out, starting with my own life." On the first anniversary of Jennifer's recovery, Michael organized a special party. He gathered all the residents of the building where he had worked, employees from his company, and family members. "A year ago, I almost lost the most important person in my life," Michael said in his speech. "But I realized I had actually lost myself a long time ago." This party isn't just to celebrate Jennifer's recovery, but to celebrate that sometimes it's possible to start over. Mrs. Margaret, now 71, was seated at the main table. "My son came from far away for this party," she told Jennifer. "He said a special friend had taught him that family can't wait." Michael smiled. Mrs. Margaret's son had changed jobs to be closer to his mother. It was as if the changes were spreading in waves. Nathan, who now ran a family therapy center, made a toast to Michael and Jennifer, who taught us that true love isn't about never falling, but about always getting back up together. The party lasted late into the night with music, dancing, and many stories. It was the kind of celebration Michael had never imagined organizing before, simple, genuine, and focused on people. When the guests had left, Michael and Jennifer found themselves alone in the living room, embraced on the couch. "Thank you," Jennifer said. "For what?" "For fighting to come back, for accepting Nathan's challenge, for choosing to truly love me. Thank you for waiting, for not giving up on us even when I had." "I never gave up. I was just waiting for you to find your way back." Michael kissed Jennifer's forehead gently. "What if I get lost again? Then I'll help you find your way." That's what real marriages are for. 2 years later, Michael and Jennifer opened a support center for couples in crisis. They combined Michael's business expertise with Jennifer's emotional insight to help others reconnect in their relationships. "Most marital problems aren't about love," Jennifer explained in her talks. "They're about communication and presence. People forget how to truly be there for each other." Michael added, "In the business world, we learn to be efficient, objective, and results-driven. But relationships need inefficiency, subjectivity, and process. They need time spent together." The center became a benchmark in New York City. Couples traveled from other cities to participate in the programs Michael and Jennifer had developed. One of the most sought-after programs was the 30-Day Challenge, inspired by Michael's own experience. Couples spent a month living more simply, working different jobs, rediscovering who they were as individuals and as partners. Nathan worked at the center as a therapeutic coordinator, specializing in cases where professional issues affected personal relationships. "It's striking how often the same problem repeats," he remarked during a team meeting. "People think they're working for their families, but they're actually running from them." "I did that," Michael admitted. "I used work as an excuse to avoid facing problems at home." Did it work? For a while, until the problems grew too big to ignore. The center also offered programs for businesses, helping organizations create more balanced work-life environments. "Employees who are happy at home are more productive at work," Michael explained to skeptical CEOs. "It's an investment, not an expense." Margaret, now 73, had become a sort of adoptive grandmother to Michael and Jennifer. She had lunch with them every Sunday and always offered wise advice about relationships. "The secret to a long marriage," she would say, "isn't never fighting. It's fighting in a way that brings you closer than you were before." Michael had sold the mansion in the Upper East Side and bought a smaller, cozier home in the same neighborhood as the building where he'd once worked as a doorman. He wanted to maintain the connections he'd built. "Don't you miss the big house?" Richard asked during a visit. "I miss the time I wasted trying to fill a big house," Michael replied. "A smaller home forces me to focus on what really matters." Michael's company had also changed. It was no longer just a business consultancy, but an organization that helped other companies develop more human-centered cultures. "We lost some clients who only cared about immediate profits," Richard said, "but we gained clients who want to build something sustainable. And are you happy with that?" At first, I resisted, but I have to admit, working for a company where people are truly valued is far more rewarding. Richard had implemented some of Michael's changes in his own life, spending more time with his family and less time at the office after 8 p.m. On the 3rd anniversary of Jennifer's recovery, Michael decided to write a book about his experience. The Executive Doorman became a bestseller, inspiring thousands of people to rethink their priorities. "I never imagined our story could help so many people," Jennifer commented during the launch. "It's because our story is the story of many people. Everyone knows someone who got lost in work." During the book signings, Michael Thompson spoke with every reader, genuinely interested in their stories. Many came to share how the book had inspired changes in their lives. "I quit my stressful job," one woman said. "Now I work part-time and have time for my children. I went back to study psychology at 50, a man shared. Your book showed me it's never too late to follow your calling." One of the most touching stories came from a 60-year-old businessman. "My wife died while I was in a meeting I thought was more important. Your book made me realize how many important meetings I missed in her life." Michael hugged the man, feeling the weight of his grief. "What will you do now?" "I'll sell my company and dedicate myself to my grandchildren. I want to make sure they know they matter more than any meeting." Stories like this confirmed to Michael that he had found his true purpose. It was no longer about building a successful business, but about helping people build successful lives. Nathan Wilson had married a fellow psychologist, and they worked together at the center. Often, Michael and Jennifer would have dinner with the couple, sharing experiences about relationships and work. "You two are our inspiration," Nathan's wife said during one of these dinners. "You prove it's possible to reconnect after almost losing each other." The hardest part wasn't reconnecting with Jennifer, Michael reflected. It was reconnecting with myself. I'd forgotten who I was before I became just a businessman. "And who were you?" "Someone who cared about people, who believed I could make a difference in others' lives, who thought success was about building something meaningful, not just profitable." Jennifer added, "Michael has always been a special person. He just needed to rediscover that under all the stress and responsibility." The center had expanded and now served not just couples, but entire families. Michael had developed programs specifically for executive parents who were losing connection with their children. "Kids don't want perfect parents," he explained in his talks. "They want present parents. There's a huge difference between quality and quantity of time." One of the most striking cases was a lawyer who worked 16-hour days and had completely lost touch with his teenage son. "He treats me like a stranger," the man said during a session. To him, "You are a stranger," Michael replied gently. "When was the last time you talked about something other than school or responsibilities?" The man fell silent for a long time. I can't remember. Michael proposed a simple exercise. 1 week without talking about work, school, or obligations. Just conversations about likes, dreams, fears, and curiosities. At first, we didn't know what to talk about, the man shared months later. We realized we didn't really know each other. But now we talk about everything. Movies, music, his wild ideas about the future. And how's your relationship with him now? He's still a rebellious teen, but now he's my rebellious teen. There's connection where there used to be only tension. Cases like this multiplied at the center. Michael realized he was living the dream he had forgotten, truly making a difference in people's lives. On the 5th anniversary of Jennifer's recovery, she gave a heartfelt speech during the celebration. 5 years ago, I chose to disconnect from the world because I thought there was no reason left to stay connected. Michael was so far from me that he felt unreal, but I discovered that sometimes love needs time to mature, to learn, to grow. She looked at Michael with shining eyes. Today we have a deeper love than I ever imagined possible. It's not the fiery love of youth, but the conscious love of maturity. It's better because we choose it every day. Michael stood up and embraced her in front of all the guests. Thank you for giving me the chance to learn how to truly love you. The party had gathered over 200 people, residents of the building, employees from the company, patients from the center, old and new friends. It was a celebration not just of the couple, but of an entire community that had grown around them. Tyler, the young student Michael had met as a doorman, was now a business graduate working at Michael's company. You changed my life, he said during the party. You taught me that leadership isn't about power, it's about service. How so? You were the owner of $1 million company, but you chose to work as a doorman to save your wife. That taught me real greatness is about sacrifice for those we love. Mr. Robert, the widower from apartment 504, had remarried a woman he met in the building's music group. You two inspired me to believe it was possible to start over, he told Michael and Jennifer. If you could find your way back to each other after so long, I could allow myself to love again. Sarah, the single mother, had finished law school with a scholarship Michael secured for her. Now she worked in the legal department of a partner company at the center. My kids ask when they'll see Uncle Michael again, she said with a laugh. You're like family to us. Margaret, despite being 75, was still the life of every gathering. She had become the unofficial matriarch of their extended community. My little grandson asked if I could be a stand-in grandma for others too, she told Jennifer. I said yes, because love doesn't shrink when it's shared. It only grows. Margaret's words became one of the center's mottos. Love doesn't shrink when it's shared. It only grows. That night, after everyone had left, Michael and Jennifer walked through the house, tidying up the last remnants of the party. Can you believe how much has changed in these 5 years? Jennifer asked. Sometimes it still feels like a dream, waking up every day with you by my side, working on something that truly matters, having real friends. What was the hardest part of this whole journey? Michael stopped putting away glasses and thought, admitting I was wrong, that I'd wasted years of our lives out of stubbornness and fear. Fear of what? Fear of not being enough. I thought if I wasn't the successful businessman, you wouldn't love me. Jennifer stepped closer and took his hands. I fell in love with a poor business student who dreamed of changing the world. The wealthy businessman was just a phase. The person I've always loved is who you've become again. What if I had lost you forever? But you didn't. And now we know we can survive anything because we've learned to truly communicate. Michael kissed her softly. Sometimes I still wonder how Nathan knew this would work. Because he understood something even we didn't. Our problem wasn't a lack of love. It was a lack of connection. The love was always there. It just needed a way to express itself again. The next day, Michael received an unexpected call. A television producer wanted to turn their story into a movie. Mr. Michael, your story has touched millions of people through the book. We want to bring it to the big screen. Michael discussed the proposal with Jennifer. What do you think? If it can help more people rethink their lives, we should accept. But on one condition, We want to be involved in the script to ensure the message stays authentic. The film Love's Doorman became a global phenomenon. It wasn't just a love story, but a reflection on priorities, ambition, and the true meaning of success. During the premiere in New York City, Michael and Jennifer were accompanied by Mrs. Margaret, Nathan, and several friends from the community they had helped build. "I never imagined my life would become a movie," Mrs. Margaret joked on the red carpet. "Every life deserves to be a film," Michael replied. "Everyone has a beautiful story to tell. We just need to learn to listen." The movie inspired a global movement called 30 Days of Presence, where people committed to spending a month prioritizing relationships over work. Michael and Jennifer traveled the world giving talks on the subject. In every country, they found similar stories. People who had lost themselves in the race for material success and were trying to rediscover what truly mattered. "This isn't just a problem in the United States," Jennifer remarked after a talk in Chicago. "Everywhere people are forgetting how to live. And everywhere there are people willing to rediscover it," Michael added. Back in the United States, Michael decided to expand the center's work further. He created a mentorship program where executives who had found balance helped others still struggling. "Changing our own lives isn't enough," he explained in a team meeting. "We need to create a ripple effect of change." The program was an immediate success. Executives who had gone through the center returned as volunteers, sharing their experiences and guiding new participants. Richard became one of the most sought-after mentors. "It's funny," he said during a session, "I spent years thinking Michael had lost his mind. Now I realize we were all the crazy ones. He was just the first to heal." "How would you describe that madness?" "We thought working harder meant living more. In truth, it meant living less, much less." Nathan had completed his doctoral thesis on relational therapy through perspective change, based on the method he had used with Michael and Jennifer. His work was accepted by international universities and began to be studied academically. "What's interesting," Nathan explained at a medical conference, "is that the method doesn't work for every case. It only works when there's genuine love buried under external circumstances." "How do you identify those cases?" "By how partners speak about each other when they're apart. If there's real resentment, the method won't work. If there's sadness over a lost connection, then there's hope." Michael and Jennifer sat in the audience, proud to see Nathan receiving academic recognition for the work that had saved their marriage. "He deserves all the credit," Jennifer whispered to Michael. "He saved more than our marriage. He saved our lives." On the 7th anniversary of Jennifer's recovery, they decided to celebrate differently. Instead of a party, they organized a gathering of all the couples who had gone through the center over the years. Over 500 couples attended. Some had saved their marriages, others had realized it was better to part amicably, but all had found clarity in their relationships. "The goal was never to save every marriage," Michael explained in his speech. "It was to help everyone make conscious decisions about their love lives." One of the most touching stories was from a couple who had discovered during the program that they were better as friends than as husband and wife. "You helped us understand that love takes many forms," said the woman. "We got divorced, but we're still family. Now our kids have parents who genuinely respect each other. And we both found new partners we're truly compatible with," added the ex-husband. Michael realized this was another level of success he hadn't anticipated, helping people recognize when it was time to go their separate ways. During the event, Margaret, now 77, gave a speech that moved everyone present. "I was born in 1947, a time when marriage was for life no matter what. I saw unhappy women who stayed together out of obligation and frustrated men who never learned to express their feelings. You're creating a new way to love, consciously, respectfully, and truthfully." She looked at Michael and Jennifer. "These two taught me it's never too late to rediscover love, whether by saving an old relationship or starting a new one. What matters is never giving up on the belief that we deserve to be happy." Margaret's closing line went viral on social media. "It's never too late to rediscover love." After the event, Michael and Jennifer returned home exhausted but fulfilled. 7 years, Jennifer said, lying on the couch with her head in Michael's lap. 7 years, since I almost lost you forever. 7 years since we truly found each other. Michael stroked her hair. Now, with a few grey strands, she'd decided not to die. Sometimes I still have nightmares where I wake up and find you're still in that catatonic state. And sometimes I dream I'm still alone in that huge house, waiting for you to come back from yet another meeting. Do those fears still haunt you? They don't haunt me, they remind me. They remind me to cherish every day we have together. Michael reflected on that. Their fears had turned into gratitude. The near loss had become the foundation for deeper appreciation. What do you think we'll be doing 10 years from now? I hope we're still helping people connect. I hope we're still learning about each other. I hope we still have so much love to give. And if we're too old to work? Jennifer laughed. Then we'll be like Margaret, spreading wisdom and kindness wherever we go. That night, before bed, Michael watched Jennifer reading a book beside him. It was a simple moment they'd missed for years, just being together, each doing their own thing but sharing the same space in harmony. Jennifer? Yes? Thank you. For what this time? For giving me a second chance, for believing I could change, for waiting for me to grow up. Jennifer closed the book and turned to him. Michael, don't you get it? I didn't give you a second chance. We gave each other a second chance together. How so? I had to learn too. I had to learn to communicate my needs without resentment. I had to learn to truly forgive. I had to learn to love the person you became, not just the memory of who you were. Michael realized she was right. The transformation had been mutual, not just his. And now? Now, we keep learning, every day, until the last day we have together. They kissed softly, a kiss that carried 7 years of rediscovery, growth, and conscious love. Outside, rain began to fall gently. Michael and Jennifer snuggled closer, listening to the water tapping against the window. It was the kind of simple moment they'd missed for years, and now treasured above any professional success. Michael, yes, I love you. Not the businessman, not the successful man, not the founder of the center. I love you. The person you choose to be every day. I love you too, the courageous woman who fights for true relationships, the person who teaches me daily that love is a verb, not just a feeling. And there, on that rainy autumn night, Michael and Jennifer fell asleep in each other's arms, knowing they had built something rare and precious, a love that had survived near destruction and emerged stronger, wiser, and truer. The end of the story. Now tell me, what did you think of the story? Do you believe Michael made the right decision? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to leave a like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other heartfelt stories like this one.